Good afternoon. It's 7:01, and we're so happy to have our followers with us again for one more week of information. My name is Dr. Willie Miles. I am the president of Dr. Willie Miles Children Foundation, located right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Our purpose and our mission is really all about children, and we've been doing this for quite some time. And I want to thank the audience for really supporting us in our endeavors. I want to thank you for actually being there for us and tuning in every week, listening to us for a full hour. Our goal is to make sure that you are informed, Well, tonight I have several announcements I'm really proud of. We're making a lot of leeway here, folks. We have a very special guest tonight, which I'll introduce a little bit later on. But I want to share with y'all, we have a new name now. It's called Let's Talk About It. Let's Talk About It. Versus just tuning into our weekly Instagram live, we want to call it Let's Talk About It. And I have some new news for you also. We're going to actually start podcasting. People have asked us to podcast, and guess what, folks? We're only a short distance away. I'm just so excited about that there's an audience who wants to hear what we're talking about. Let's talk about it. And because of each of you all, we were able to deliver about to Atlanta stations, about nine fire stations. We actually delivered, we didn't do it, Chick-fil-A did it for us. They actually delivered the Chick-fil-A boxes. Folks, I want to thank you all for contributing, and the firefighters really enjoyed them. For a matter of fact, I want to give a shout out to one of our managers in New York. He is actually making sure that all of our websites are good. He's making sure that all the announcements are coming out. And trust me, I worry him to not death, but life. He's accountable for doing all of this. His name is Sebastian. So y'all say hi to Sebastian. He's not on, but I got to keep him with me, y'all. I got to keep him with me. Absolutely wonderful. On tomorrow night, we're having a special event. And I was trying to figure out how can we make these protests be relevant to children. And it's quite relevant. I saw a little boy holding a sign that said, "Am I next?" And I could not but wait to actually do something. So tomorrow night, folks, we have a special event. Tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, we'll be back talking about how the killing affects Black children. You know, when Black children see Black people being killed, especially as horrific as that was, we need to make sure that our children are okay. And the question is, you know, what can we do about it? I do believe there's a major impact. So I want to have a discussion on that tomorrow night, and I look for all of y'all to be right back and tell your friends and everybody about that. So make sure you all show up. Again, make sure you're looking at, if we don't have your emails, please send it to us. We'll make sure we add you to our email list. Tonight, folk, I am just very, very excited to introduce a young man that I've known for quite some time. His name is Taquan Russell, and Taquan is a child advocate. And folks say, what does that mean? I know when y'all saw my announcement about bank robber and drug dealer, you said, what is Dr. Miles up to now? But I want to make sure you all understood that. I want you to understand the impact that parents make on their children. Now, this is not to throw blame. It's not to fault anybody. But I think it's important that that families understand that whatever you do with your husband, wife, significant other impacts your children. And the question is, do your behaviors, do your relationships affect what your children will be? So I want to file a disclaimer. I've known Taquan for many, many years, and we were talking a couple of weeks ago. We reconnected, and he told me a lot of things, what happened to him as he was growing up. I had no idea. And I thought it'd be a great, great story to share with our audience tonight, to share what he went through, and not only what he went through, but his mindset. Because oftentimes Taquan's mindset at age 12 will be the same mindset that your children will have. So I'm going to stop talking, folk. And Taquan, welcome. It's so good seeing you.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Miles?
I'm doing real, real good. I'm happy to have you on here. Taquan said this is going to be his 15 minutes of fame, but guess what? We're looking for a whole lot more out of this right here. A whole lot more. It's not about fame. It's about getting information out to him, to our audience. So I'm going to try to do this as methodical as I can because he has an awesome story and it's just packed with information. So our topic is from Little League football player to bank robber, drug dealer. Do parent relationships impact what their children will become? Taquan, again, welcome again, and we love you. And just tell us your story, start talking about from age maybe 8 to 12, because some things began to happen between 8 to 12, and then you can carry the story and I'll jump in.
Okay, well, I'm gonna say around 8, 9, things did kind of started taking a turn in my life. Around 8 years old, I was 8, exactly 8.
Mhm.
I actually almost caught my first initial charge at 8 years old. And what happened was I was in a Kmart with my grandma, and we stayed in Richmond Heights. And I was in a Kmart with my grandma one day, and she let me go to the toys. I asked her, "Can I go to the toys?" And I ended up going to the toys by myself. And once I was over there, I saw a lot of stuff that I, engaged in, a lot of stuff that I liked. So me trying to be, slick, my grandma in the clothing area, I'm in the toy section. So I grab a toy or two and put them, put them on underwear or whatever, try to steal them. I got caught. When I got caught, my initial reaction, I wasn't embarrassed, but I felt like I let my grandma down. Mm. So I went through the whole. I didn't go to the detention center. I didn't go there. They just talked to me, gave me a lashing, a tongue lashing, and then my grandma, she handled me once I got home.
I want to ask you, at that point, Taquan, were you staying with your grandmother, or were you staying with your mother and just visiting with grandma?
I was staying with my grandma then.
So
I was in third grade.
So your grandma was taking care of you at that point.
At that point.
And you don't have to tell all your business, but just like why was that occurring?
Why did I stay with my grandma? Because my mom and my dad, they couldn't find suitable jobs for them, for the family, because we had a family of 4. And together they couldn't do it. I don't know what was happening at that time, because again, I'm 8. But together they couldn't do it. So they just came to the conclusion of, well, we're going to split the kids up. And hopefully they have a better upbringing, since they knew that they really couldn't afford us at that time.
Did your parents talk to you about that before they did that? Or they just said, you're going to stay with grandma?
You're going to stay with grandma.
And no questions asked?
They didn't break it down. It was just like, drop me off at the front door, and I'm with grandma. Now, I didn't know that I was going to stay with my grandma for years to come. I didn't know that. But
now, listeners, please understand this, that many of us have done that. We drop our children off as if they don't have a brain, and we don't engage them in decision making. And oftentimes, young people think that you're dropping them off because you don't want them, and it's not because you don't want them; it's because you need some help with them. Taquan, jump to age 12 when your parents were working on the divorce.
Well, I ended up moving from Richmond Heights to Fort Lauderdale, and once I got to Fort Lauderdale, for my family, it was a big transition in a good way, because my mom and dad, both of them had nice jobs, and they was able to afford a home for us. So once we got that home, we felt like the Jeffersons, like moving on up. Like, you couldn't tell us nothing. So I started playing football, because I was always into football, always into sports. And I played football, I think it was a year and a half. And then stuff started crumbling family-wise between my mom and my dad. Now, I didn't see none of this. Like, we didn't see the fights, we didn't see the arguments, we didn't see the demise of the relationship.
But you all knew something was happening, though, right?
No, not at all.
You did not know. Got it.
Not at all. Like, they kept it away from us until one day I came home. When I came home, I asked my mom, where was Dad? Because he hadn't came home in a certain time he usually come. And she told me. She was like, he left. And I couldn't register it because I'm 12. I'm 12 going on 13. But, she just set us down and told us that, he decided to leave, and this, that, and the third, and whatever.
But Taquan, how did that impact you when you found out your dad had left?
At first, to be honest with you, I was happy. Because my father was very, 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 very strict. Like, he just was a strict guy. So I'm just telling you. So you were happy because he was strict with you. I was happy that he was gone because he was so strict.
I want y'all to hear this now. He was happy as a black male that his dad was gone because his dad was strict on him. Keep telling your story. And so when he left, it's like
My sisters, they felt pain because that was the man in their life. That's the first man they ever met, first man they ever fell in love with. So they felt pain, but I didn't because I felt like he was a dictator in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I was happy. So I started doing a lot of devious things that I know.
Hey, before you go there, I want to talk about your dad was the coach on your football team, and tell them why you stopped playing football.
But he coached me the first year and a half when we moved from Miami to Fort Lauderdale. We played for a team called Western Tigers, and he was my coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to just try to live up to his standards because he was my dad, then he my coach, then he was a public figure at that park. Like everybody looked up to him, they knew him, whatever. But once he left, my love and passion for football, it wasn't there no more because he was like my drive. I knew I had it as far as the physical ability, but not the mental ability to keep going on, to keep going to practice, to keep running left. I didn't have that. So that's what he came in at.
Well, Taquan, I want you to relax a little bit because I'm gonna tell you how I heard that story. Now, tell me whether I heard that story wrong or not. You said the reason I didn't want to play football anymore because everybody knew that was your dad, and then to go out there and know that he would not be there.
Everybody knew him, and once he left, I couldn't play for that part no more in my mind because everybody's going to know the detachment. Like, where your daddy at? And I only see your mom come out here, and this, that, and the third, and and I used to look nice when I played football, like bald pad, all the cleats and all the name brand stuff, and that was definitely going to plummet. Like I couldn't look nice no more at that part.
So you represented your dad while you're out there because your dad was there. He wanted to make sure that if you were his son, that you looked good
and I played good,
and that you play well. Not only look good, right, but play, make some touchdowns,
both everything. So what I ended up doing is transferring parks and going to a park called Lauderdale Lakes where nobody knew me. So I didn't really have no standards to live up to at that park. But again, my passion for football was over because my dad left. So I might have played.
So your dad took your passion for football. So
yeah, I allowed him to. Yeah.
So I'm just sort of like jumping in so our followers can hear the story. So what I'm hearing is that you said it didn't affect the girls, but it really did because you were a male child, and when your dad left, he took something with him from you. And what he took from you was the pride that you were his son. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Continue with the story.
Yeah. So I ended up playing at another part, but again, I lost the passion. So once I lost the passion, my mom asked me one day. My sisters wanted to cheer; they was cheering too, and I was playing also. But once it came time for that tuition fee, it was, a little extreme for my mom to pay. So I told her what I was.
That's probably right.
But I told her I will let football go. I said I will let football go, and once I let football go, you can use my tuition to pay for my sisters and allow them to cheer. And once she did that, it was off to the races. It was off to the races for me to be in the streets because now I have idle time.
Okay, now we have about 45 minutes. So I want to sort of bring this story into full so that our listeners and our followers can really understand the impact that parent relationships will have on their children. Not saying that we're trying to blame the parents because eventually the children grow up and they make their own decisions.
Yeah.
But we have to think about when children are not able to make those decisions and if they find out that parents have separated and or abuse is going on and so forth, how it affects them and how they think. Right.
And I feel when you leave a child to make a decision on their own, they're going to make a childish decision. And that's just what it was. So when I was left to make a decision on my own, I made all the childish decisions. You're going to make all the easiest decisions and childish decisions that you can make. For me, personally, that's what my thing was. To get the easy way out, by all means.
Let's move this. So after age 12 up to age 14, 15, what began to happen? Talk about the spiraling in your life, spiraling downward.
Oh, man. Well, when I was 13, I ended up meeting you, so that was, I don't know. I mean, it was it was a blessing,
Mm-hmm.
definitely a blessing, because before you and after you, I never met a man like you.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the good part of me turning 13 and 14 and all of that good stuff. But after my dad, couldn't no man honestly really tell me what to do. They can guide me to the water,
Mm-hmm.
but they couldn't make me drink it. My dad could make me drink that water. After him, no other man could do it. So
Yeah, that's kind of amazing what you said. You said that your dad could make you do the things you need to do, and that no other man could. And I think oftentimes we had a program back where we talked about the role of males in their children's lives. Well, you're absolutely proof that it's critically important that men be there, because they, especially positive men, they help shape the child. Right?
yeah,
Let's move your story.
yeah. So what was that? Oh yeah. So I, like, again, you was a positive influence, but I had concrete thinking of I guess just doing the opposite of right.
Mm-hmm.
And I got caught up in it because I turned into, like, I'm not going to say a leader of my little crew, but
Mm-hmm.
so to speak.
Okay.
And they usually move how I move.
Mm-hmm.
And me coming from the city of Miami, crime ridden and all that good stuff, I brought that mentality to Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
So I was snatching pocketbooks, doing everything you can name, anything to get any type of anything you can name. I was doing at the age of 14 for any type of income. Like,
what were you doing it for? Like, what? Like, why were you robbing people? Like,
because I had a fetish and a fixation for clothing.
mm-hmm.
Like, I'm very deep into fashion at that time of my life because I didn't have it. Growing up, I didn't have it. So once I was able to obtain any type of finance, it's going towards clothing or some type of something for self-preservation. It was going towards that all the time. And you need clothes every day. So this turned into a habit for me. Like, I didn't have a drug habit. I didn't have none of that type of stuff. But fashion and being presentable to the streets and to the public, there you go.
Yeah, I want to move the story when you moved to Atlanta.
Well, I moved to a place three hours outside of Atlanta called Moultrie, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up, when I was with you, I kept getting in trouble. So I ended up moving. My mom ended up coming to get me because it was just too much for any man. Like, you're not even my father, so it was a lot of pressure on you.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up moving to Moultrie, Georgia. And once I got there, it got worse. Because now I have no male figure whatsoever around me. At least I did have you, where I have to try to walk, eggshells, at least around you.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't have no man to do that around. So I was the man at 15 years old of my household. Mm-hmm. And once I got up there, I did try to do right. Like, I filled out applications for different, like Walmart, different little bag boy jobs, whatever, paper boy. They even had a cotton field in Georgia at that time. This is like 93.
Now, followers, I had no idea they had cotton fields and they offered him to work in the cotton field. Now, I thought that was back. But he mentioned cotton fields. I said, what?
Yeah. My grandmother had a house, a nurse that used to come to the house. Mm-hmm. And her grandson used to work in the cotton field in the summers. Mm-hmm. And he was a white guy. And she turned me on to that, but I couldn't even get that job. Like,
so the white lady told you about the cotton field?
About the cotton. And I couldn't even get that job. So once I seen that I couldn't even pick cotton, I think mentally and psychologically I used that against my own self to justify what I'm about to go do for the remainder of my life. In my mind, I'm about to do this the remainder of my life.
Taquan, did you feel you had a choice at that point? Or you felt like you just had to do this because you tried everything else?
I don't feel like I didn't feel like I had a choice because of my surroundings. Like, my mom, she didn't have anything. I'm the only male figure in the house with her, and my two sisters. So I really felt like it was all on me because she can't say you need to take care of us. But when you see a woman struggling and there's a young man you see it and you empathize for that. So by any means, you're going to try to do something, whether it's legal or illegal. And mine happened to be on the illegal side.
Taquan, if just think about this. If your dad was there, do you think your life would have been different?
I know it would have, because he didn't know it, but he silently motivated me. Even though I didn't have, I loved him, but I don't know, it's a tricky, because how strict he was. But once I became older, I look back on everything, and I knew that the type of love he had for me, it would have propelled me into something greater.
Because his strictness was to prevent the things that you went through.
And I didn't understand that. Like, you couldn't have wrote that down on a sheet of paper and read that to me and made me understand for nothing. Like, I just didn't get it.
And that's the problem with most young people. They think their parents are real strict and rigid, not understanding that they're just trying to save you from a horrible life of crime and so forth.
But what's crazy, I talked to so many different individuals who had parents like my dad, or their mom was like my dad. And everybody says the same thing as far as their strictness created who they are.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the strictness, they would have did this, or they would have been this way. And it's true.
Taquan, tell us a story about when you met this guy and he gave you $4,000.
I met, that's back in Moultrie when I was 15. And I met this guy from Miami also, in the small town called Moultrie. And once I met him, we became real cool. And it had a lot to do with geographical, because both of us were from Miami, so it had a lot to do with that. He knew the schools, I knew the schools, whatever. So one day, we used to always hang. He used to always come around me. He looked very nice. He always dressed good. And I was hearing that he was, a drug dealer in the hood, but I didn't know, because he didn't look like the average. Like,
and you were how old?
I was 15.
15. Right.
Yeah. And he didn't look like the average, not the ones that I knew growing up. He didn't look like that. So me and him became real cool. And one day I went to his apartment, and he had another dude up there. And when I went up there with the other dude, we was talking or whatever, and he asked me to do something for him. He said, "Can you go downstairs right fast? Take this downstairs." It was a brown paper bag. And I said, "Sure, I'll take it down for you." Because I just wanted to be cool, because they look like money. So anything they needed me to do for them, to help them, whatever, I'm going to do it, because I want to be in the same number you guys are in, the same lifestyle, whatever you're doing, I want to do. I want it. So I went downstairs with the paper bag, gave it to the guy that was in the car. I came back upstairs. So when I came back upstairs, I just sat down and continued to talk and watch TV. And he gave me cash. So once he gave me the cash, I looked at it and I asked him, "What is it for?" It was $4,000. And I said, "What is this for?" And he said, "For going outside and do what I asked you to do." So I gave it back. I'm like, "Man, I don't need it, man. You good?" Because I just want to be down. Like, don't give me $4,000 and then kick me out the crew. No, I want to be down. Like, don't know. So I gave it back. And he was like, nah, listen, man, take this. He said, anytime that you doing anything in this game, which was the drug game, and they compensate you with money, you have to take it. You have anything you do in this is for the dollar. Nothing for free. Because it comes with so many years behind it. But I didn't understand that. So it's basically like, get all the money you can get, because you're going to jail. So don't say, no, you don't want this, and no, I don't want that, or you take it, because eventually you're going to need it for bond, for lawyer, for something. Now, he didn't tell me all that part. That's the part I had to find out at the end.
Okay. And so basically you were lured into this by someone who was already into drugs. You had a need and your family had a need, and you saw this as the only viable option. They gave you $4,000 for going downstairs
But
to take a bag to someone. So how much
away.
money could you have made in that 1 week as a 15-year-old?
All the money used to come through me, because I had the house that all the drugs were being distributed out of. So I seen all the money. And on an average, like, we was making 20 grand in like 4 days. So they'll pay me like $3,200, $3,500
a week.
Every week.
Okay. So let's talk about now, when you brought that money home to mom, like, what did she say?
She didn't, honestly and truthfully, and we didn't discuss this, but my mom was on my payroll. She began to work for me and my my friend.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't see no other way out either, because at that time she's getting up in age and
Mm-hmm.
this, that, and the third. So she seen the easy way too.
Mm-hmm.
So we put her on the payroll to turn a blind eye to traffic for us. She used to go out of town to Ohio, Detroit, Miami, Atlanta, like anywhere we needed her to go, she would drive because she was older. So we would let her drive, and just in case the cops would see an older lady with gray hair, and we ain't gonna pull her. And that's how she became, you know, a part of what I was doing.
Got it. So now we're going to move it on, because this is a very interesting story, and we're telling this story for a reason. We're not telling this story to glamorize it. We're telling this story so you can understand what your children go through. Some of our followers have talked about where it takes positive parents, not just positive parents, but parents who understand they're responsible for their children. They're responsible, and their relationships are responsible. Because oftentimes when there is discord in the family thinks the children don't know about it, but the children do know about it. And it makes a world of difference. And what most parents will say, oh, guess what? They'll get over it. Not as quickly as we do.
Yeah.
Taquan, we are about 7:30 now, and we're gonna move it, because I want to hear the story about when you decided to rob the bank. I want you to tell them your story, like what happened and what made you do that.
Well, my decision to rob the bank, honestly, it came from, again, my expensive lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I had just did another major robbery before the bank, and I spent all the money. Like,
now, of course, just like I asked, I want to know how much you got.
Between the banks, between 40, 60.
Okay. Now, so at that point, you had robbed the bank, and that bank was right here in Atlanta, right? I wasn't in Moultrie.
No, it was in Albany, Georgia.
It was in Albany, Georgia. And I want you to be graphic. Tell our followers what you did. You told me you were behind the bushes and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, before you answer, someone asked me, what is the subject of this course? For those who are coming on for foster care training, I want you to understand now, this is not necessarily a course. This is our way of talking to the community about things their children face. But the topic is, from Little League football player to bank robber and drug dealer, do parent relationships impact what their children become? Do parent relationships impact what their children become? All right, Taquan.
Yeah, so again, I had just did something before that, and I split completely all the money on fashion, hanging out, doing this, whatever. But my model was, because how I move, I consider that money free money, so I get it again. So it didn't matter to me if I spent it or not. So one night I was laying in the bed, and I just woke up the next morning, and I told my girlfriend that I was laying in the bed with at the time. I told her I was going to go rob a bank. She said, she woke up out of sleep, like, what? And I told her again, I said, I'm going to rob a bank. And she pleaded with me like, no, what are you thinking about? Like, what are you doing? Well, I'm a concrete thinker. Once I think of something, that's it. Like, nobody can talk to me. It doesn't matter. Like, we could talk for 3 hours. We could cry and all. But I'm still going to do what I set out to do. And I left the house that day, and I went and what's the word?
Taking out?
Yeah, I went and scoped out different type of banks and this, that, and the third. And I noticed that none of them in that part of Georgia had no security in the bank. So day 3, I went to the bank and I hid in the bushes like 8:30 in the morning. And the bank opened to 9, so I was just watching everything. Just watching everybody go back, all the workers go inside the bank and everything. So at 9 o'clock, probably 9:03, I walked out the bushes. And once I walked out the bushes, I went to the door. And once I got to the door, I grabbed the door, went in, and demanded the money and all of this good stuff. Well, bad stuff. So once I did that, I left out, and I ran back across the street. When I ran back across the street, I took off all my clothes because I had on another pair of clothes under my clothes. I took off all my clothes, left them in the bushes, I left, and I got away.
Taquan, I, if some kids are watching, I don't want you to get them a plan now. You get them a plan.
No. Because see, after the aftermath of what I just told you, the aftermath of what I just told you was a complete, like, a detrimental transition to my life. Like, after that, everything went downhill.
Okay. Some of our listeners are really anxious. They're saying, I want to hear what happened in the end. So so I want to share that you finally got caught, and you said your mother turned you in.
Well, no, I went on the run.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I went on the run for like 6 months. And I kept doing the same thing on the run. So I had to talk with myself, and I knew that eventually either I'm going to die out here in these streets, or I'm going to go to jail for a long time for the list of crimes that I'm committing if I do get caught. So what I said I'm going to do, it was Thanksgiving in '97. I said I'm going to just turn myself in. Like, I'm going to just sell my gun that I keep doing this foolishness with and turn myself in.
Taquan,
and that's what happened.
So I wanted to ask the question, like, when did you change? And so you're saying something came to you that said, if you keep doing this, you're going to be killed or in prison for a long time.
For a long time.
Well, I have a word for that, something that came to you. But anyway.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go from the bank robbery to prison.
Well, once I got in prison, I honestly, and it's sad to say, but I adapted so quickly because it reminded me of my environment I grew up from. Like, it was no different. Because I grew up in a place called Westview Terrace in Opelika, and it was a prison within itself. We used to stay we stayed in an apartment complex, and we never went out our apartment complex. We didn't hang nowhere. We didn't go nowhere. And if we did, we went in groups, but we very rarely went.
Because it was very dangerous.
Yeah. And our apartment was real dangerous. We allowed no outsiders to come in. So I grew up in prison. In my mind, like in Westview, I grew up in there. So once I got there with a lot of dudes and this, that, and the third, I blended to the point where a lot of inmates that was older than me, that been there like 13 years, 17 years, 10 years, they thought something was mentally wrong with me because how I so-called had fun in jail. Because I didn't register that I'm in a cage for a lot of years and this. I used to always feel like I'm not gonna let the white man take my mind. I ain't gonna let that. So I'm gonna still act the same way I acted, and that wasn't a good thing because it led to the same trouble that I got in on the street. I got in prison.
How many years did you serve in prison?
I ended up doing a total of like 11.
How many were you supposed to do?
8.
8 years? So you got more time because you were fighting and stuff.
I was doing the same. I wasn't fighting.
So you were selling drugs in prison?
And robbing.
So what you're sharing with us is that prison replicates the street.
You have to want to be reformed. You have to want to. Prison don't just automatically reform a person because they throw you in prison. Like, that's not true. And they call it correctional facility, but that's for who wants to be corrected.
So I want to back up a little bit. I'm watching the time because we're going to finish the story. So you're telling me that in prison you did the same thing you did on the streets?
The same exact, nothing different. And I had a crew in prison. They used to roll with me and the same thing. I ended up, before I came home, I ended up doing 18 months in the hole because of a robbery charge that ended up getting somebody almost killed. Wow.
And you're not making an excuse, but we're talking about how the incident at age 12 catapulted him into this lifestyle. Now he's taking responsibility for everything he's done.
Yeah,
but he made a proclamation. He said, if his dad had been there, his life would have been totally different.
It is not to blame him,
right?
At all. But I know, I know because how I move. Like, as soon as he left, everything changed.
Yeah,
everything changed. Like, I wasn't playing with guns and skipping school, and I wasn't doing none of that before because I was scared of his wrath, of his punishment, of what he's going to say, how he's going to act. So I always had something to look up to or live up to as far as he was concerned. But my mom was very passive, and I knew this.
Yeah. Taquan, eventually your mother passed. Was she passed while you were in prison or before prison? When did your mother pass
Now
away?
I got to see her. She passed 4 years after I got out of prison.
4 years after you got out. All right. Now, someone asked the question, like, when did you change? What changed you? I think you sort of answered that. But like, what would you do to wrap up? Like, we have a little more time still. But like, I think
what honestly changed me, and it could sound, I don't know, it might sound because it wasn't really deep what changed me. But I ended up going back to prison, like for the third time, on the same charge. And when I went for that last time, I was like 33. And when I went, it didn't feel the same no more. I felt like an older guy in prison with kids. Remember, I started at 19, but now I'm 33. And to have to get on the top bunk, and all the, like, because you're in bunk beds in prison. So I got to get on the top bunk, jump off the top bunk. When I just got out of a king size bed, and like it started registering in me that I'm wasting my life. I'm wasting my life because I'm still doing kid things. Kids jump on the top bunk. Like a grown man shouldn't be on the top bunk. So I'm still doing childish ways and living in childish, in a light.
Well, prison in itself is like parents. It tells you when to get up, when to go to bed, what you're gonna eat, who you're gonna play with, and so forth.
And that's why I think I got in so much trouble, because remember, from 12 on up, I didn't have no one telling me what to do.
Right.
So once I get in prison and they try that, I'm not listening. And in my mind, the white man trying to tell me what to do. You're not going to break me. I'm not listening. You can put me in a hole. I don't care. Like, that was my mindset until that last time I went to prison. And I had to rationalize that it don't make sense.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with some of our listeners who just came in. I'm Dr. Willie Miles. I'm the president of Dr. Willie Miles Children Foundation, located right here in Atlanta, Georgia. And we have our special guest tonight. His name is Taquan Russell. I call him a child advocate because I think that he has a lot of information that he can share with young people. And it's not to glorify his life. It's really to talk about what they should not do. But not only to children, I think he should be talking to many dads and moms to talk about how relationships impact their children and how their relationships can impact what a child becomes. Don't forget, listeners, all behaviors are learned behaviors. Taquan was not born a bank robber.
Nah.
He was not born a drug dealer. The environment caused it. And the same thing can happen to your children. The same thing can happen to your children. And that's why we're having these kind of programs to make sure that you are aware of how your kids think at age 12 when the husband and you all are getting divorced, how they think when you're separated, how they think when you hear your husband says, I'm leaving you, and all that kind of stuff. Or are you telling him you're going to leave him? So it's important that you understand the emotional impact on children and how it can lead to a life of crime. And also it talks about the importance of males in their children's life. Someone wrote, therefore, he grew up and saw things for what they are.
Yeah. But the environment is very key. And it's not just the environment as far as you're living in, like your like the society or your neighborhood. It's not just that. It's your household, your environment that you grow up in. Like, it plays a major role. It plays a major role.
Of course it does.
Because either it's going to break you or it's going to make you be a better person. But it's either or.
Yeah. But it's kind of amazing, Taquan, that you got out of that. I mean, you survived, and there are many people who don't survive.
And it's crazy. I wasn't, not to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Go on.
I used to tell the girl that I was dating back then in the 90s. We used to always have deep conversations. And she asked me one day, I was like 17, 18, and she asked me one day, man, you spoke about this. She asked me what did I plan to be in 10 years. And I laughed because that was so funny to me. I'm like, 10 years? Like, I'm going to be dead for 25. And it touched her. It almost made her cry because she couldn't believe that she's dealing with a guy who feels like he's going to be dead before he's 24 years old, 25 years old. Like, he doesn't see further than 10 years.
But guess what? Not only not going to be living, but really didn't even care to.
I did, and I was doing everything. It felt like I was doing everything in my power to leave this earth. I was putting myself in every dangerous position you could think of.
You know,
Thank you.
this is such a compelling story about how a young man starts out and loving dad. And I'm not blaming dad, I'm talking about families.
Nah.
And then something happens, a trauma, and then it's so traumatizing, he doesn't ever get the right way of thinking until he goes to prison for the third time. But I think it's also important you let's talk about love for a little bit. Because a mate does help you change, right? And a mate does help you stabilize. Now you're with someone, now you have a fiance, right? What's so special about her? Like how has she contributed to your life?
She's very, very grounded spiritually. So off top, like that helps me. Because when I do feel I'm not gonna say a trigger to go back to that lifestyle, but when I do feel like down and weary about, you know, just life, she's always there to speak a positive word, always, always. And that helps because I feel like if I always had that, I stay on the straight and narrow because I feel like I have to sort of prove something to her to be straight and narrow, and to be an entrepreneur, and to be such and such and such. So, you know.
But tell me more about her. Is she an entrepreneur? Like what does she do?
She's entrepreneur, not a word. Like she does hair. That's her passion. She does hair, but she has like about 5 different streams.
Taquan, is she near you?
No, she just left.
Now she knew I was going to ask her, talk to her. That's why she left.
No. She had to go. She had to go get some stuff from the hair store to do. All right, you know.
But you're thinking that she actually played a part in keeping you. You know, you told me also. You said that you still go and buy things and you throw it away because you think that it's going to take you back to where you came from.
Yeah, I buy stuff, and it's not the fact that I throw it away, but I don't have that much care for it anymore. I might wear it one time and put it up, or one time and just because I know for a fact that I was a slave to that stuff. Like I know it. A lot of people don't confess to that type of stuff because it's worldly. But I was very, very caught up in worldly items, worldly things to my core. So now, you know, I don't even invest that. I mean, I still try to look nice, but I don't care to hold on to it. Not like I used to.
So the message to young people is like, don't become a slave to stuff, to material things.
Yeah, because honestly, I think everybody becomes a slave to something. But become a slave to the right thing.
Right.
You know? Because everybody's going to become a slave to something, in my opinion. You're going to become a slave to something. But just make sure it's the right thing you become a slave to. Because if you don't, it'll take you down. It will take you down.
But Taquan, how difficult was it for you to, like, reconnect to the community once you got out of prison? Like, were the same friends around you dealt with, or were the same people? Did people try to encourage you to get back into that lifestyle? Talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, when I got right back in it when I got out. But the crazy thing is, the whole time I was in prison, all I was doing, and like again, not to glorify nothing, because it ended me back up in prison. But while I was in prison, honestly, I was looking for a connect. Looking for someone that I could connect with, so when I get out, we can start this shit all over again. I don't care if you're in California, Utah, Bahamas, because in federal prison, you meet people from around the globe. It's not people that's in your state. You meet people from everywhere. So I just wanted to connect. So when I came home, I started the same thing, but I started with marijuana. I said I'm just going to use weed. And you know why I said weed? Because I'm not going to get that much time. So mentally, I'm still ready to go back.
Right.
I'm just not ready to go back for a decade. I just want to go back for 4 years this time, or 3. And that's crazy to think like that.
Right.
Like I'm really contemplating going back to prison for this money.
So Taquan, you have children, right? You have children. How many children do you have?
I got 3 girls, 2 boys.
And do you ever have these kind of conversations with them? Do you have conversations about what to do, what not to do?
Yeah,
are you worse? Are you stricter than your daddy was?
See, that's the thing about, and that's the tricky thing about having a strict parent, because some people, you either want to be like him or you're not going to be like them. And you in the middle, you're torn, because if you don't be like them, you feel like he's going to end up like you. If you do be like them, you're going to feel like he's not going to like you growing up.
Well, there is a middle ground, though. There's a middle ground between being really flexible with children and being really strict. There's a middle ground, and it's called compromise. It's called talking to them and have them understand why you're this way. Sometimes parents are just punitive. Like I have a person who parents keep him on they keep him on a punishment for 60 days. Now no punishment ain't gonna last for 60 days unless you're locked up somewhere. So the whole point is that we have to be reasonable when it comes to disciplining our children and punishing our children. And there's a difference between punishment and abuse, because you can be just psychologically abusive to children by being too strict on them.
Yeah.
And it's about trusting your children. It's also about your children trusting you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So for the next few moments, let's talk about, like, I know people still want to hear. Ain't nobody looking for you right now, are they?
Looking for me? No.
So you are. So
I wouldn't have did this back then. No, we wouldn't have been doing this. No.
So you are good. And some people want to know, what are you doing? And I'm going to tell them my plan for you, what I have for you. I think he's a great voice and a great advocate for not only children, but for men. Not only for men, but men who are drug dealers and men who are part of the streets. He's strong enough now where he's not going to be enticed to go back. They need to hear from him, because what oftentimes people get is the beginning of the story, but they don't get the end of the story. They don't get the end of the story. And Taquan's end was prison. He could have been dead. He wasn't supposed to make it, but he has an anointing. All right, so I had to go and put it out there. I won't put it out there. He has an anointing, and that's why he was saved.
Yeah, and then I had a praying mom. My mom was very, very, very spiritual. So I have to, applaud her too, because a lot of her praying, I know it covered me. They had to.
Taquan, do your friends let's talk about that for a little bit. You didn't have many friends, but check this out. When you're behind bars, do your friends flock to see you?
What? No, man.
So I'm saying,
but I'm gonna tell you something. A lot of people in the game and in the streets, they don't really know that. But I was always told that as a kid. When I started doing wrong, I was prepared for prison mentally, because they would tell me, your girl gonna leave you. You ain't gonna have no friends coming to see you. Like all that stuff, it really played out. But all that stuff was embedded in my head from the age of like 16 on up, until I went to prison. But no, you're not gonna have no friends see you. Like that's not gonna happen. And if you do, it might happen for the first few months or something like that, because it's fresh. But nah.
As that years roll on, they forget about you, don't they?
The calendars will go to flipping. You're gonna have a lot of people leaving. A lot of people. But honestly, you can't fault. I couldn't blame none of them. Like I can't blame nobody for leaving me in prison. Like I put myself in hell, and I want you to come to hell with me. Like that don't make sense.
Right. So so we're gonna start wrapping up, but it's sort of like you made some very strong statements. You said one is that you changed because you knew you had to change, right? And you changed because you knew you had children who needed you.
Yeah.
You also changed because you got older. You also changed because you began to understand why your parents were so strict on you.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, there's no good reason to do stuff, but the reason you actually started doing this stuff was to support your family.
Yeah, that's what it started off.
That's how it started out.
Dang, that's not why I kept it going.
So when parents tell their kids, you need to go out there and get a job so you can support me, what are they saying?
Verbally, they asking their kids to support them, but
and they're telling
you can't really say that your kid is intaking it the way that you're delivering it.
Right.
You don't know how your kid is taking what you're saying, because they might go to do anything to help you and support you, because they consider that a job. No, some people consider hustling a job.
Well, it is a job. One of our listeners says that, you have no idea how many people you're helping just by telling your story. And this is part of what we want to do. We want to tell the story so that parents who say, I never knew that kind of lifestyle, so they can have an inside view on what goes on children's minds when parents have poor relationships. And this is what this kind of programming is all about. I do want to share with y'all that I have been asked to do podcasts, and we're actually going to do that. And they're thinking our audience should be much broader. My whole goal is to ensure that people who are not part of this kind of life understand it. I didn't say accept it. I said understand it. I want to have discussion with prostitutes. I want to understand why they do what they do.
Yeah.
We had Dr. Sharon Brown on a couple of weeks ago. She talked about sex trafficking.
Yeah, I
we
heard.
got great information from her. So
there's a lot of stuff I didn't know about. So yeah, it was very informative.
Yeah, so that's why we do this right here. Taquan, I do want to share with you. I want to first of all applaud you for making it through that journey, because many brothers and sisters don't make it through the journey. We just saw one who was killed last week who did not make it through the journey, and he wasn't in prison. He lost his life over a counterfeit $20 bill that he may not have even known that he passed on.
Yeah.
Are you with me? And so I want to tell our listeners that tomorrow night, I need y'all to tell everybody, please come on with us tomorrow night. We're going to talk about the impact of seeing Black men being killed. What kind of impact does it have on Black boys? And the topic is going to be very, very riveting. I have a guest on. He's also Joe Henley. Joe is the president of Joe Hensley Foundation. He's also going to have some young guys on that he's awarded scholarships to talk about this thing of inequity, this thing of what does it feel like for a child to see another Black male being killed? I'm talking about like with a knee on his neck, and you see the life coming out of him. I tell you, when I saw that, I was devastated. I was devastated. And as one of my friends put it, he said, it hurt my soul. It hurt my soul. Again, I want to thank you, Taquan, for being on. Thank you, your girlfriend, your fiance, for allowing you to do it. Thank her for all the help. And I want to, again, encourage y'all tomorrow night to please join us again at 7 o'clock. Tell your friends all about it. We're going to be talking about what happens to our children when they start seeing those kind of things that are happening. I'll make sure I get it right. Those things that are happening to Black men that are being killed. How does it impact them? Again, you all have been wonderful. Thanks for supporting us, and thank you all for making our first community service project a riveting one and a wonderful one. The firefighters of Atlanta really enjoyed it, and they're becoming one of our partners. Thank you all so much. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All right. Bye.